Washington mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630.
It's 7:37 on WMAL. Coming up at 8:35, we're going to talk about Pat Moran, son of Jim Moran, and his plea of guilty in an assault against his girlfriend. A lot of unanswered questions in that story. Also at 8:05, Senator Jim DeMint, who just announced his retirement from the Senate in South Carolina. But first, Brian, we've got our pal.
Our good friend, you know him, you love him, the man, the myth, the legend, the host of Varney and Company on your Fox Business Network. Stuart Varney is on the line. Hello, Stuart.
Brian, good morning to you.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Okay, look, are we going off the cliff? Give me your 2 cents worth on whether or not a deal is in the works, and is it a deal that we can accept?
There is well, I think there will be a deal, and I think it's going to be a lousy deal from my point of view. I think the Republicans will retreat on the issue of tax increases, more revenue from the rich. I think the president will promise spending cuts but not deliver, and everybody will simply ignore the debt. That's a deal which Wall Street will love, which may give the economy a short-term boost, but in the long term, I think it's a real problem.
Usually we see a short-term boost for the economy, Stuart Varney, right now because of the Christmas shopping season, where this is when retailers really make their gravy. What are the early reports on how the Christmas season is going?
Well, it's not going that well. Over the Thanksgiving...
Started strong, though.
Look, some of those special offers that were offered late at night on Thanksgiving Day did well. But the overall Thanksgiving period, that's the 4 days of Thanksgiving, the big shopping period, I think that sales were actually up less than 2% overall. Online did very well, but bricks and mortar, overall, everything included, up only 2%. Now, that's not very strong. And I've got a suspicion that this Christmas Hanukkah period will be somewhat similar, not very strong. I think the economy gets a boost early next year if we get this deal that I'm talking about, because you'll have certainty. You'll know what your tax rate's going to be. You'll know what's happening with government regulations. Okay, the certainty will provide a modest boost for the economy. But overall, I think we're headed for a debt crisis, and I don't think anybody realizes it.
Stuart, keeping in the Christmas shopping season, one of the companies that often does well at this time of year is Apple. But Apple's been making news that hasn't been extremely positive. What's going on with this company?
Lots of things happening there. If you by any chance watched the big concert last night, for victims of the storm, Sandy, Samsung was all over it with their Galaxy phone. If you watch football on Sunday, Samsung, the Galaxy phone, all over it. The iPhone... this is just a feeling I've got here, maybe in retreat a little bit, and Apple's whole king of cool image may be under challenge. For the first time in a long time, I think here comes Samsung, here comes Galaxy, and I think they're making a big impression on Apple.
Those Android commercials are devastatingly effective, though.
Yes.
Where they talk about, when will we get that?
Right.
I mean, those are really good commercials.
But isn't there a lawsuit with regard to patents on the technology between Apple and Samsung?
Yes, there is, but that's kind of been suspended by various jurisdictions, and whether or not Apple shuts Samsung out of the design of the tablet market. I think that's very much a side issue. The latest news is that today Google is introducing a Maps app. And basically Google is saying to Apple, hey, you guys get lost. Yeah. So Apple is being challenged on a variety of fronts, and I find that very interesting because Apple is still the world's premier technology company, but it's facing its first serious challenge right now.
The Federal Reserve is going to spend $45 billion a month to sustain it's like continued QE, quantitative easement. And is in your mind, is that going to be something that is necessary, or is it overkill?
Well, wait a second. What's it done so far?
Well, that's my question.
Exactly.
Ben's been printing up a storm, and we've still got 7.7% unemployment, and that's not really a real figure.
But they said they're going to do this until employment comes down to 6.5%.
Yeah, that's new. But who's to say that it's going to succeed where in the past it has not? Look, he's going to keep printing. But my question is, what happens when he stops? sooner or later, you do have to stop this money printing, you know. I don't know whether it's 2 years down the road or 3 years or 5 years. I don't know, but sooner or later, you stop. And then something hits the fan, and it's not going to be real nice.
Well, and while they keep printing the money, what actually happens to the value of our money?
Well, the value goes down. At the moment, we're being saved because the value of many other major currencies is also going down. The euro, for example, and that's not exactly a strong currency these days.
No, it's not.
You know, so by comparison, I guess the dollar is still okay. But if this was the real world of a few years ago, this dollar would be sinking big time, and that would be because Ben is printing dollars big time.
But I've always heard that when the dollar, do I have this right? When the dollar goes down, generally gold goes up. Are people buying gold?
They have been, but in the last couple of days, it's gone below $1,700 an ounce. I guess the point here is the dollar generally is weak. Therefore, gold, oil, tangible commodities generally stronger. I think that's true. That's a general rule, and it's true today.
Stuart Varney, he's the host of Varney and Company on Fox Business Network, weekdays at 9:20 a.m. Stuart, I wanted to call you Brian because I like you so much, and you know Brian's my partner here. Stuart,
he's from Texas, I do believe.
Yeah, I couldn't place the accent. Stuart, you know, to get back to Boehner, you say that the Republicans are going to cave on raising taxes on the rich. I mean, politically speaking, what would you have them do, considering what many believe to be a weak hand? I understand that Congress is responsible for the purse strings and these debt issues, but ultimately they're dealing with a Harry Reid Senate and a President Obama who believes that he has a mandate based on his election to raise taxes on the wealthy. They have a very weak hand. How do they play it?
Larry, everything you've just said is absolutely correct. What I don't want the Republicans to do is what I think they're going to do, and that is I think they're going to be going for a bad policy. I don't think we should be raising taxes or tax revenues on anybody at this moment because the economy is very weak. But nonetheless, politically, that's what the Republicans are going to be forced into doing. In fact, they've already given ground. $800 billion in new tax revenue. I think Mr. Boehner has already agreed to that. So politically, they're being pushed into a bad policy economically. That's my position.
All right, Stuart Varney from the Fox Business Network. Stuart, always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much, Brian. Larry.
Talk to you soon.
You know, Stuart's that accent. It sounds like he's, you know, he could be a Rolling Stone or a member of the Who or
maybe like it reminds you of Mick Jagger's accent.
Exactly.
I knew that's where you were going.
And speaking of those British bands, they all appeared at the 12-12-12 benefit concert for Hurricane Sandy. You won't believe what Mick Jagger said. We'll talk about it right after.